Jai Hind, Namaste, hello and a very warm welcome to UPSC for everyone. My name is Abhinav and in this video we'll be discussing selected topics from the Hindu and Indian Express for the date 1st of October 2020. Now in this video we'll be discussing the following topics. BrahMos successfully test fired. So this test comes on the heels of the growing tensions at the LAC. Now BrahMos is a supersonic cruise missile and the relevance of this latest test is number one, it is going to be deployed at the LAC. And number two, we have increased the range from 300 kilometers or 299 kilometers to 400 kilometers. And this one has a very high content of indigenous content. So I will be telling you about the BrahMos missile. What does the name BrahMos signify? And what was this test all about? Then southwest monsoon ends with 8% surplus. So in this, I will be introducing you to the concept of LPA, which is the long period average. What is LPA? Then how we come at a surplus figure, what is surplus monsoon, what is normal monsoon. Then I will also tell you why there was surplus monsoon this year. Then EPCA opposes paying farmers for not burning paddy stubble. So EPCA made a submission to the Supreme Court that the suggestions given by a state like Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh that they should pay farmers for not burning paddy has been opposed by EPCA. So we have already discussed this paddy issue in 2-3 videos, so we'll just quickly go through this news. Then new definition for ideal weight of Indian men and women. Interesting news. It has been revised after 10 years. ICMR has come up with NIN for this, so we will see what this is all about. Then Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana. I will be telling you about this scheme. Why are we discussing this scheme? Because recently there was the first review meeting for this scheme and the center was not happy with the implementation. So that is why we are going to discuss this scheme. Then time to shift focus to the maritime space. This is an editorial from the Hindu and this talks about why India should now focus more on the maritime space and how India's options on the continental policy have been for all practical purposes exhausted for now. Then Berlin patient, an interesting case. This was a person, the only documented person in history to have been cured from AIDS. And now he has died recently because of cancer. So we'll see his case. So this is all that we are going to discuss. Now let's get started. BrahMos successfully test fired. So amid the growing intensity of the standoff and the growing problem at the LAC, India is testing its supersonic cruise missile called the BrahMos. Now India has enhanced the range of BrahMos to 400 kilometers. So earlier the range was up to 300 kilometer because India did not sign the MTCR, and under MTCR Russia could not collaborate with India to build a missile which could carry a payload for more than 300 kilometers. So we signed the MTCR. Now we can raise its range and also the payload capacity, because under MTCR the payload capacity was only up till 500 kgs. So, and this BrahMos is a two-stage missile. First stage is a solid propellant and the second stage is a liquid propellant. First stage, it just sets up the missile to a supersonic speed, and then the second stage, the scramjet engine kicks in and it takes it to almost 3 Mach, right? And now it has increased its range up till 400 kilometers, like I said, and it can hit targets with pinpoint accuracy within this range. So let us see what this BrahMos is all about. And one more thing, it can be used by all the three forces, the Air Force, the Army and the Navy. So all of them have the launch capabilities of BrahMos. So it is a very, very important missile and it is a supersonic cruise missile. So let us see. DRDO successfully test fired the BrahMos surface to surface cruise missile. So it is a surface to surface cruise missile with an indigenous booster and airframe sector along with subsystems made within the country. So this is very, very important that all the subsystems are being made within the country now. Now this name BrahMos is basically a combination of two names, Brahm and Mos. The Brahm stands for Brahmaputra river in India and Mos stands for Moscow river in Russia. New BrahMos can strike targets over 400 km away with pinpoint accuracy. The BrahMos land attack cruise missile system was cruising at a top speed of Mach 2.8. So its maximum speed can be around 3 Machs. I will also tell you what is Mach speed, right? It is a two-stage missile with solid propellant booster engine as its first stage, which brings it to a supersonic speed and then gets separated. I have told you. the liquid ramjet, then takes it closer to Mach 3 speed in the cruise phase. And if you remember, we also read about scramjet when I told you about the HSTDV, the hypersonic technology demonstration vehicle. It also uses a similar technology. The supersonic missile is one of the prime precision strike missiles used by all the three forces, the Army, Navy and Air Force, and it is a joint venture between India and Russia. Brahm stands for Brahmaputra River, MOS stands for Moscow Rivers. Now what is the speed of sound? The speed of sound is basically known as Mach speed. So under standard conditions in dry air at 20 degrees Celsius, it is 1234.8 kilometers per hour. And this speed is referred to as 1 Mach. And what is the supersonic speed? It is the speed above 1 Mach and below Mach 5. Now this is a classification of speed of an object in relation to the sound barrier. Subsonic speed is below Mach 1. Transonic speed is exactly at Mach 1. And then supersonic above Mach 1 and hypersonic is above Mach 5. So for these speeds, we need scramjet or ramjet engines. In the hypersonic demonstration technology test vehicle that we developed, we are using a scramjet engine. And in the BrahMos missile, we are using a ramjet engine. Okay. So this is all about BrahMos. Southwest monsoon ends with 8% surplus. So in this article, I will be introducing you to a concept called LPA, which is important for your geography, as well as we'll also get to know why there was a surplus in monsoon this year. And we'll also get to know on what criteria do we define a surplus monsoon. So let us begin. The southwest monsoon this year has ended with 8.7% surplus, surpassing estimates by the IMD. This is the first time since 2010 that India has got more than 100% of its long period average of 88 centimeter in consecutive years. So this long period average or LPA was recently changed in 2019. Earlier it used to be 89 centimeter. Now it has been scaled down to 88 centimeters. Now basically LPA for any region is the average of rainfall, say for 30 or 50 years over a region, and that forms its LPA, and this LPA can be used for making predictions about the rainfall. So let us see. So what is LPA? LPA of rainfall is the rainfall recorded over a particular region for a given interval, like a month or a season, average over a long period like 30 years or 50 years. What is the significance of LPA? It is a benchmark while forecasting the quantitative rainfall for that region for a specific month or season. So based on LPA, if it is above LPA, we can say that rain was in excess, and below LPA, we will say that rain was below the normal, and there's a range from 94% to 102 or 105% in which this rainfall is said to be in normal range. Now what is the value of LPA? Like I said, in 2019 it was revised. And who revised it? This is important point for your prelims. Ministry of Earth Sciences, MOES, revised it to 88 centimeters, 1 unit less than the previous 89 centimeter. Now what is surplus monsoon? If the monsoon recorded is 110% of LPA, then it is called surplus monsoon. Now last year India saw a record rainfall of 110% of LPA, the highest in a quarter century. India has never got 105% of the LPA in consecutive years in at least 30 years. But this time we had, and like I said, normal is between 94% to 105% almost, and excess is 105, 10%. Now what are the reasons for this? If you remember, we have discussed this in video 2, I think, the whole southwest monsoon and the reason for excess. So basically what happened that in the Bay of Bengal, there were many long-lasting low-pressure systems that developed during the month of August, and that made up for the deficit rainfall in the month of June and July. This was one of the reasons, and the other reason was the development of a La Nina, which is the converse of El Nino, that also led to more rainfalls. I explained in that video with the whole diagram and everything what is El Nino. So what is El Nino? It is heating of central equatorial Pacific and responsible for diminished monsoon rainfall over India. Now, like I said in the other video as well, one day I will discuss it because this whole monsoon in itself would require more than 1 hour to fully cover it, and for you to totally understand what is El Nino, La Nina, how monsoon occurs. That is why I am not touching this topic right now. Now, what is normal rainfall? Defined as 96 to 104% of LPA, like I said. And what is excess rainfall? Rains above 110% of LPA are termed as excess. So this is about your rainfall predictions. And for your trivial knowledge, IMD has placed 36 recording stations, the major stations throughout the country, and based on the record from all the 36 stations, IMD comes up with its figures and its predictions, right? So you should know that LPA, what is LPA? Who gives out LPA? MOES revised it to 88 centimeter in 2019. Then what is normal rainfall? What is excess rainfall? El Nino and La Nina. And why there were more rains this year. And 2019 and 2020, it has been after a very long time that 2 consecutive years we have had rainfall above 105% of LPA. So this is all that you need to know about this news. New definitions for ideal weight of Indian men and women. So this was long overdue. So ICMR, in collaboration with National Institute of Nutrition, has come out with new parameters for ideal weight and reference height for both men and women, and this has been revised after a decade. So in 2010 it was 60 kg for 5 foot 6 inch, now 65 kg for 5 feet 8 inches. So this is the ideal range. Again, for women, 50 and 5 feet height, 55 kg and 5.3 feet high. So it also indicates that Indians are growing taller and they are also having access to more nutrition. That is why their weight ranges and height ranges are also being increased in terms of standards. And for the first time, it has also recommended the sodium intake because the problem of hypertension is growing. So it has limited the amount of sodium that one should intake. It has recommended an intake of 5 gram per day with sodium limited to 2 gram per day. So your common salt should not be more than 5 gram per day and sodium should be limited to only 2 grams. Intake of 3510 milligrams of potassium is recommended per day. So the ICMR, National Institute of Nutrition, has redefined the ideal or reference Indian adult man and women with regard to age. Now age they have also changed. Instead of 29 to 39, they have changed it to 19 to 39 years. It includes RDA and EAR. Dietary allowances and nutrition requirements for Indians includes estimated average requirements. So I will just tell you what is EAR and the tolerable upper limits of nutrients for the first time. Now this is very important, the tolerable upper limits, because some people have this tendency just because it is supposed to be healthy or it is supposed to be good, so they have so much of it. Then again, excess of everything is bad. So they have also given the tolerable upper limits. Now what is RDA and EAR? So if you are somewhat aware about fitness or nutrition, then RDA is basically your recommended dietary allowance, that at least this you should have in your daily diet to maintain a healthy body. And EAR talks about the average daily nutrient intake levels at the population level. So let us see. Recommended dietary allowances, RDA, are daily dietary nutrient intake levels which would be sufficient to meet the nutrient requirements of nearly all healthy individuals, while EARs are the average daily nutrient intake levels of the population. So individual level, RDA, population level, EAR. Now again some figures. It's not necessary that you know them, but we are just going to go through them. The cereal, legume, milk composition in the diet for a moderately active man has been improved to 3:1:2.5 from earlier 11:1:3 within a given low cost window to meet daily protein requirements. So they are also paying attention to protein because protein is the building block of your body and it is also important for your immunity. And unfortunately, Indian diet has been very poor in protein because we focus more on carbohydrates, because carbohydrates are cheap, right? So this is the tendency we have to basically have more and more carbohydrates, but we neglect the protein. So it is important for you. Visible fat intake for sedentary, moderate and heavy activity has been set at 25 gram, 30 gram and 40 gram a day for adult man and 20, 25 and 30 for adult woman, as against the single level recommended earlier. So earlier there was a single level. Now based on your activity level, they have given recommendations for visible fat intake. So for the first time, fiber based on energy intake was recommended, and the level of about 40 gram per 2000 kilocalorie has been considered as safe intake. So you should have what? 40 gram per 2000 calories. Now, depending on your activity level and your lifestyle, you should also focus on your calories, and based on calories, you should get your fiber intake as well. Now, talking about source, so it has relied on many sources to collect data like the National Health and Family Survey, National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau, World Health Organization data, Indian Academy of Pediatricians. So it has gone through a comprehensive data set to come up with these values. So again, this is important for your PT point of view as well, and they could be asking you such questions even in interview situations, whether you're going for UPSC civil services or you're going for SSB, or in any situation such questions could be put across to you, especially if you're into fitness and health. EPCA opposes paying farmers for not burning paddy stubble. Now this paddy stubble we have discussed in so many videos. In fact, in yesterday's video as well, I think we discussed something about it. So what all do we know by now? That what is paddy? Why do they burn the stubble? Because they want to prepare the field for the next agricultural season for the sowing of the rabi crop, that is wheat. And it takes 45 days to naturally decompose this stubble. So instead of waiting for 45 days, they burn it, because there are also some policy issues involved, like the Punjab Act, that you cannot sow the rabi crop till a particular time, because it is to conserve the groundwater there. So many issues are involved. So till the time comes for sowing the rabi crop, the environmental conditions also change. So the smoke rises, and the environmental conditions over Delhi NCR and Northwest India, it develops in such a manner that it helps to stabilize this pollution, and that leads to a very big problem. So it is a mixture of many problems we have discussed in detail. You can go back and refer to earlier videos. Now let us just quickly go through this news. So paying farmers to manage paddy stubble as an incentive for not burning is not advisable and could be a perverse incentive, because it might be the case that they take the money and still they burn it. So EPCA has said that instead of giving them money, they should be given access to machines which could act as an alternative to stubble burning. The effort by Haryana, Punjab and Uttar Pradesh must be to ensure that farmers have easy and affordable access to stubble management machines which provide an alternative to crop residue burning. Now, why this problem occurs? Each year in monsoon, paddy refuse is set on fire by farmers primarily in Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, so as to prepare their fields quickly before sowing wheat crop. We have discussed this. This along with contributing factors such as low temperatures and wind directions. Because remember, I also told you that southwest monsoon, it recedes, and the winds, the strong winds, the westerlies, they start blowing south of the Himalayas. So they bring the smoke from Punjab and Haryana over NCR. So this along with contributing factors such as low temperatures and wind directions leads to high pollution levels in Delhi and nearby area. Now what is stubble? It is rice chaff and straw which is removed as leftover from paddy crop. And I told you that the straw which is of non-basmati variety is very high in silica, so it cannot be used as a fodder for the cattle. So that is why it is burned. Now what is EPCA? EPCA was a body that was constituted under Section 3 of Environmental Protection Act for the National Capital Region in compliance with Supreme Court order. Now its function is to basically manage the pollution problem in this region. So what does the EPCA do? It has the power to take action suo motu or on the basis of complaints made by an individual, representative body or organization functioning in the field of environment. It takes all necessary steps for controlling vehicular pollution, ensuring compliance of fuel quality standards, monitoring and coordinating action for traffic planning and management. So these are the functions of EPCA. Again, we have discussed them before as well. So it is just a kind of a revision for you. Now let's move to the next news. Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana. Now first of all, why are we discussing it? Because recently there was the first review meeting of this scheme and the government of India was not happy. It conveyed to the MPs that they need to be more proactive in implementing the scheme, and also the Ministry of Rural Development conveyed to the state governments that they have to do more to make this program successful. Now about this program, this was launched by the Prime Minister in October 2014 on the birth anniversary of Jayaprakash Narayan. Now under this scheme, each MP has to develop certain villages as model villages. That is why the word Adarsh. Now initially they had target between 2014 and 2019, the target was 3 Adarsh Gram or 3 model villages per MP, and between 2019 and 24 their target has been expanded to cover 5 more. So that means between 2014 to 2024 each MP has to develop 8 villages as Adarsh Gram. Now how will they do it? They have to mobilize the funds under the CSR and the philanthropies that are available, and also they can use their MP led funds for realizing the objectives of this scheme. So let us just look how is the scheme designed. So I've already told you, launched by Prime Minister October 2014. Now the goal under the Yojana, MPs are responsible for developing the socio-economic and physical infrastructure of 3 villages each by 2019 and a total of 8 villages by 2024. From 2019 to 2024, 5 more Adarsh Grams must be developed. That was the additional target that was added. So this implies that a total of 6433 Adarsh Grams of the 2,65,000 Gram Panchayats will be created by 2024. Now what is the process? Under this process, the basic unit for development is the Gram Panchayat. Now we have 3 categories of MPs: Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha and nominated. Now nominated can be in both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. So Lok Sabha MP chooses a Gram Panchayat from within his or her constituency. Rajya Sabha MP chooses a Gram Panchayat from the rural area of a district of his or her choice in the state from which he or she is elected. And the nominated MPs, they can choose a Gram Panchayat from the rural area of any district in the country. So Lok Sabha MP, a Panchayat from within his or her constituency. Rajya Sabha MP, a Panchayat from the state from which they are elected, and nominated MP, any Gram Panchayat. Now how is the action taken? The MPs engage with community, facilitate the village development plan and mobilize the necessary resources, particularly from corporate social responsibility and philanthropies. The planning process in each village is a participatory exercise coordinated by the district collector. So nodal implementing agent who is district collector. MPs also fill up critical gaps in the plan using the Member of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme, MP-led scheme. We have also discussed MP-led schemes because till 2022 these schemes have been suspended because under the austerity measures government is curbing expenditure. So this was a casualty of those austerity measures, and there was a hue and cry in the parliament, and MPs were demanding that government should restore their funding under this scheme. So this is all about the Sansad Adarsh Gram Yojana. Time to shift focus to the maritime sphere. Now this is an editorial by Happy Mon Jacob. Generally I don't agree with his opinions because again JNU angle and whatnot, so let's not get into it. But here he has made some good points. So this is the only portion of the article that we are going to discuss. First he gives some background that Quad 1.0 was given by Abe. Abe was the architect, but back then in 2007 the world was different. World had hopes for China and everybody was China's friend, and China was important to each and every country for their economic growth, and China was being promoted. But during that time Abe was far-sighted enough to think of a mechanism called the Quad, which would focus on the Indo-Pacific. We have discussed Quad in detail before as well. Quad comprises of 4 members: Japan, Australia, India and USA. And importance of Malabar exercise, and probably this time Australia is going to be invited to Malabar exercise because it is a trilateral exercise between India, Japan and USA. So if Australia is invited, then the Quad will be formalized. And recently the foreign ministers of Quad, they also had a meeting, a virtual meeting. So the steps are going in that direction, and Quad is basically focused in the Indo-Pacific region. And now its aim is to contain China because China has become more and more aggressive in Indo-Pacific region, and it is threatening the world peace and global order. So this person is making a good point that our excessive focus on the continental policy has reached its limit. Now why does he say that? Because number one, India is engaged in a nutcracker scenario, that is we are stuck between 2 hostile neighbors. One is Pakistan and one is China, and they are acting in tandem. We don't have much space, and our diplomatic friendships have gone sour in recent times. Then there is loss of Afghanistan because of return of Pakistan and Taliban. Now the Afghan peace process that is going on, it is going to be a sham. America wants to leave, and I've told you time and again, because America has lost interest and America wants to leave before the elections so that Trump can boast one more victory. Now as soon as America leaves, who will come back? Taliban, that is for sure. And who controls Taliban or who has close links with Taliban? Pakistan. So as soon as that happens, India will virtually lose Afghanistan. Number one, why? Taliban plus Pakistan. Then China is also very much interested in Afghanistan, and so is Russia. And China and Russia have also come close recently. So there is going to be a new scenario in Afghanistan where there would be a very, very little space for India, and India has to think out of the box and very creatively to have a say and space in post-American pullout Afghanistan. And also we have had deterioration in relations with Iran. Sorry for this thing. It is supposed to be Iran. So there our relations have also deteriorated with Iran. Why? Because Americans had put sanctions on us to import oil from Iran and we gave in to them. So we have sort of lost a friend in Iran as well. We are not as close as we used to be. So simply our mission Central Asia has taken a huge backseat right now. So there's not much space left for India to exercise its strategic goals. Now the Indo-Pacific or the maritime region, it has many opportunities for India. So that is the next part. So before we get into the maritime strategy, let me again tell you the background that Quad 1.0 was the dream child of Abe. Back then it was a different world. But once it was announced, China showed strong reservations. And why? Because it was hiding its naval plans. And after 2012, when China was able to grow its navy, it started showing its assertion, starting with rejection of the ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration, the same court that recently gave a decision against India in the Vodafone case. So China and Philippines were fighting over some islands in the South China Sea, and the Permanent Court of Arbitration at The Hague ruled in the favor of Philippines, but China flatly refused to accept the decision. And from that moment, China started flexing its muscle in the maritime region. And then after that, China started making incursions into the Indian Ocean region, which is the strategic backyard of India. So now India must also get into the Pacific region, because China considers Pacific region as its own strategic backyard. And if China is getting into our region, we must go into their region, because you can only deal with a bully by taking the bully by its horns. And unless and until we don't talk to China from a position of strength, they won't take us very seriously. So talking of maritime strategy, this article says that the maritime space is wide open for coalition building, rule setting and strategic exploration. And India has a very, very important place, because India is right in the center of what is called the Indo-Pacific geopolitical region. If you see the world map, this is India, this is Indian Ocean, right? Strait of Malacca, and then starts the Pacific Ocean. So India is right in the middle of this strategic region. So India has great leverage point, and that is why also these great powers like America, Japan, Australia, they also want to join hands with India to counter China. There is also great growing interest in the region. For example, France and Germany have also come out with their own Indo-Pacific policies. And the American and European powers are now looking to push back China. And more importantly, the maritime space is a lot more important to China, and it can be countered there. So if we can put pressure on China in the maritime space, then we can force China to retaliate from the LAC. So that is for the longer term, because this LAC problem is not going to solve anytime soon. Right? Yesterday only I told you, now they are talking about a new drama, that the LAC of 1959. So they are just going to up the ante. So we must be prepared for a very, very long war. And this is going to be a war of attrition. Not many bullets would be fired, but we would have to maintain our positions. So it's a good strategy that we start thinking of future and we start countering China where it hurts the most, and that is the maritime space. Why China is so worried? Because see, this is India, this is Andaman, and here is the Malacca Straits. It's a very narrow passage. Now more than 80% of China's shipping that contains the oil and the fuel on which China is critically dependent, that passes through this region. So if India were to stop the supply or the movement of Chinese ships from this region, especially from near the Andaman region, then China could be in very, very big trouble. And that is the reason why China is also making incursions into Indian Ocean region. Recently, Chinese naval ships which were roaming in the region as exploration ships, they were turned away or turned back by the Indian Navy, and there have been sightings of Chinese submarines in the region. So they are trying to get into our region. So it's a good time that we should pay them back in a language that they understand the most. And more surprisingly, this article is coming from a JNU person, and he is talking about India joining hands with Western power. So it really must mean something for them as well. So these are the relevant or important points from this article. That is all you have to know about from this editorial. Berlin patient. Now such topics are important for your PT and also just for your general trivial knowledge. So this Berlin patient is a person called Timothy Ray Brown. He was the first known person to be cured of HIV. So that is the only documented medical case in history where a person has recovered from HIV. That is why he has a particular name, Berlin patient, and he died recently because of cancer. So Timothy Ray Brown, the first person known to be cured of HIV when he had a unique type of bone marrow transplant, had died in California after relapsing with cancer. He became known as the Berlin patient after his HIV was cleared by treatment there in 2007. So this is the only documented case. Brown was diagnosed with HIV in 1995 while living in German capital, and in 2006 was diagnosed with a type of blood cancer known as acute myeloid leukemia. While Brown remained clear of HIV for more than a decade after being treated, he had suffered a relapse of the cancer in the past year. So his treatment that he received for leukemia, it miraculously worked and it cured his HIV. Now this awakened a ray of hope in the scientific community, and many studies have been conducted since then, but they haven't been able to exactly pinpoint that what happened. That is why it is known as a miracle case and the person is known as Berlin patient. So you just need to know that Berlin patient was a person in Germany who is the only person documented to be cured of HIV AIDS. So that is all for this video. Thank you folks for watching. If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel because we post videos daily, and please press the bell icon so that you don't miss out on any new videos that we post. Also, if you like our videos, please press the like button, and please do connect with us on our Instagram page UPSC for Everyone. See you next time. Till then, stay happy, stay safe, and have a great day. Namaste and Jai Hind.